Hello. So, in today's lesson, it's our brand new topic looking at crime and punishment over the last 1,000 years in Britain. It's called a thematic study where we look at one thing, in this case, crime and punishment, and we look at how it changed over a long period of time, the last millennium in England up to the present day. So, today's lesson is starting us back in the year 1000, and we're looking in Anglo-Saxon England. So, today's lesson is looking at laws and law enforcement in Anglo-Saxon England. Now we've got two learning objectives today. We're going to try to understand how the Anglo-Saxons changed how laws were created in Britain, and also to try to understand how the Anglo-Saxons enforced the law in Britain. Now you will have a quiz to complete at the end of this lesson. It's in Google Classroom. Please take care, please read the questions carefully. You only get one go at it. Any questions you've got, please contact me, gbrown@stopsleyhighschool.co.uk. So, what exactly is this topic about? Well, like I said, we're looking at crime and punishment and how it's changed in England over the last 1,000 years. We're going to be looking at changes in laws, so rules that are applied that we have to follow in England. Crimes, when people break those laws. Law enforcement, how do we make sure people follow the rules that have been set? And punishment, what's the correct way to punish people who break laws? So some things we'll be looking at in this topic as we go through the last 1,000 years. Just some questions that you will be considering. Why were punishments so brutal in medieval times? Why did the Tudors create so much confusion with religious laws? Why was Christmas banned in England for a short period of time? Who used to catch criminals before the police force were formed? Why were English criminals found in Australia? How did prisons change over time to what we have today? Why was Jack the Ripper never caught? And why did the death penalty end in England? So they're just some of the things we'll be looking at as we go through this course. So let's go back in time to the year 1000. And before then, who had made the laws? Well, for centuries, local communities in England had made their own laws. So there would be different laws for different parts of the country. However, from around the year 1000, the kings of England were starting to take more control. They were showing their power and their influence by actually creating and enforcing laws. So instead of every little community having their own separate law, the king said, no, we have got one rule for the entire country. It doesn't depend on which area you're in. I create the laws, I enforce the laws. This is me showing I am the most powerful individual. Now, the Christian church had more of a role as well in laws and punishments, because the church wanted to give those who had committed crimes opportunities to save their souls so they would go to heaven. And the use of punishments increased. This was to show the power of the king across the land and to show what would happen if his laws were broken, so that people would keep the king's peace, people wouldn't cause trouble. So one example of this could be that when people were killed for committing a crime, when they were executed, they would be hung, and it would be from a tree that you could see from a distance. You could see a dead body swinging from a tree from a distance. And this would be a solemn reminder that the king had the ultimate authority in England and you had to keep the law. So we've looked at how laws were created, but how were they enforced? Well, of course, there was no police force in the year 1000, and this means that community was vital in law enforcement. You would have small communities like this one in the picture, where everyone knew each other. And what happened was people in a community were placed into groups called tithings. And there would be up to 10 males in a tithing. You were placed in one when you were aged 12 years and over. And all of the men in a tithing were responsible for the behaviour of all of the others. So that means in your tithing, if one person went missing, it would be the responsibility of the tithing to find them. So it's like a big game of manhunt, essentially. If one person from your tithing is thinking about causing trouble, it would be up to everyone else in the tithing to calm him down and say, no, look, we don't want the hassle here. It's not worth it. If you cause a crime, we have to find you. We have to bring you to justice. But what about if you were the victim of a crime, or if you saw a crime happen? Well, again, there's no 999 to call, but what you could do is raise a hue and cry. This was then you shouted for help. and everyone who heard this was expected to chase the suspects and do their job as well. So the community was very much the police force back then. Religion, as we've looked at already, played a huge part in law enforcement as well. Now, people who were accused of crimes could take an oath in public. Here they would swear their innocence before God in front of their community, and they would say that they were innocent, and they would get God to acknowledge that. And if you did this, that would often be enough to let the accused person walk free. So you might be sat there thinking, well, that's it, I just swear an oath and I go. Well, that might seem ineffective, but there's a few things to consider. First of all, there was a fear of lying under oath in front of God, that if they were lying and they took the oath, they would go to hell when they died for eternity. Also, it would be hard to repeat the offence again, because communities were so small, everyone knew each other. So if you did kill someone and you lied about it under oath, the chances are you couldn't do it again. Everyone would be keeping an eye on you in that small community. And also it's worth considering, if you were caught red-handed, so for example, if you stood over a dead body with a knife in your hand having stabbed them, you couldn't then say, oh, I'll take an oath to prove I'm innocent. You were caught red-handed. Or if you were a repeat offender, you've taken the oath once already, then the oath wasn't offered to you. So where do we still see this practice in Britain today? Where do we still see some idea of an oath being important? Well done if you thought about the court system, for example. When people are told to give evidence or people are told to make statements in court, they often swear on the Bible or swear on their sacred text, or they might affirm if they aren't a religious person. And essentially they are swearing an oath here. They are saying that they will tell the truth. Now that doesn't always work. You still get headlines today of people who lie in court. But it's interesting to see that this seems to come back from 1,000 years ago with Anglo-Saxon England. How else can you enforce the law? Well, there was something called trial by ordeal. And in any cases where there was not enough evidence if a person was guilty or not, the church would be called. Now the idea was that God saw everything. God was always present, and God would know if this person was innocent or not, and God could give a judgment. However, it's quite difficult to communicate that with God. It's very difficult for God to sort of bellow down and say if they're guilty or not. So trial by ordeal was set up, and these would take place in churches. And the idea was that this was an attempt to communicate with God. So, for example, the first one we'll look at is burning. So people could be burnt, their hand would be burnt. There were several ways of doing this. They could have a cauldron of boiling hot water, and they would have to put their hand in. The severity of the crime depended on how deep they had to put their hand in, sometimes all the way up to the elbow, and they would have to take a stone out of the boiling hot water. Other times they would have to take an iron, as you can see in the picture, which was basically white hot, hold it in their hand, walk 2 meters before they had to drop the iron. And as you can imagine, either time the hand would be severely burnt. This person would be in a lot of pain. What they would then do is wrap the hand up, and they would see after 3 days how it had healed. So they would unwrap it. And this healing process would be a sign from God. If the hand had started to heal nicely and it was clean, then this person was innocent. This was God saying, no, this person is innocent. This is me sending my message. If the hand was starting to get all infected and pussy and so on, then this was God saying that the person was guilty. You could also have trial by cold water as well. Trial by cold water would work where a priest would bless water in usually a lake or a river nearby to make that water holy. Then the person would be tied up and would be placed into the holy water. Now, if they sank to the bottom, they were innocent. The holy water had accepted them, and it was just a case of being able to get back out afterwards without drowning. However, if they floated, this showed that the person was guilty, and the holy water had rejected the individual. So that is a brief look at laws and law enforcement in Anglo-Saxon England and how people coped without a police force. So like I said at the start, you'll have a quiz to complete now in Google Classroom. Please read the questions carefully. Please make sure you take your time with it. You only get one chance at the quiz. Any questions you might have, feel free to contact me. gbrown@stopseyhighschool.co.uk. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.